Hello everyone, it's Nick Peters here, back with the Gaming Theologian channel, and let's go to our intro. So, on a recent show, I had someone leave a comment to tell me some things they wanted to see me talk about sometime, and two topics came up. So I felt a sneeze coming on, but it looks like it might have passed. One was Mormonism, which I have a specific time when I'm going to be discussing Mormonism. And the other was the church fathers. And I also want to bring out to you guys that I do listen to comments that are shared. And if there's some topic you'd like to see me talk about, and I think it's one that I can talk about, I'll do so. I try and please the audience after all. Anyway, the church fathers. Now, one of my favorite comic strips, like many of you out there probably, is Charles Schulz's Peanuts. And there's one where Charlie Brown comes across his sister, Sally, writing a paper on church history. And she says in it, when writing about church history, it's important to go back to the very beginning. And then she says, our pastor was born in 1950. You know, the thing is, that could be the way a lot of Christians sadly do approach church history. They say, and if they don't go that far, they'll say where Jesus came and he lived and he preached the gospel. And then next Martin Luther came along, and I'm not knocking Martin Luther, but there's a lot that happened in between the coming of Jesus and the Reformation. And the thing is, we know a lot about what happened in that time. And it's part of our heritage. The church fathers are not just for Protestants and Orthodox to read. I mean, Catholics and Orthodox to read. Protestants need to read them too. These are people who lived and died for the cause of Christ and sacrificed so much. A number of them were martyred just so we could be the Christians we are today. They lived in a world where Christianity could very easily be a death sentence. And yet, they kept going. They are the ones who copied the text of our Bible. Even if they didn't directly do it themselves, it was their time that did that. We have a Bible today because the early church made sure that we had something we could pass on to future generations. These are the people that refined the theology that we all have today. It's not as if that, say, when Paul went around, he was explicitly teaching, say, the Nicene Creed. He wasn't. That needed to be worked out. And these were people who they couldn't go to someone else and say, okay, who's the authority on the doctrine of the Trinity? These people had to be the authority. They had to come up with the ideas. They had to formulate everything. They had to work out and say, okay, what does it mean for Jesus to be fully God and fully man? They were the ones who had to work out what is the canon of the New Testament going to be. We really do not acknowledge enough the debt that we owe to them. And I think for a lot of Protestants, there's a fear that, that's for those Catholics and Orthodox to understand and work with. No, it's for all of us. Their history is our history, and most of us don't even know their names. That being said, the good news is this really is something that's, especially today, easy to correct. Because you can, if you have a Kindle device, for instance, you can easily look up the church fathers and purchase their writings, and it won't cost you an arm and a leg. And you can get the complete church fathers for, I think, $3. If you have a Kindle, there's no reason you shouldn't be able to handle that. I've been going through I've been going through them for a few years now. And just to so you know how much there is to read, I certainly haven't been able to read them every day, but I've tried for most days. And right now I'm about nearly 20% through. Okay, trying to get there finally. I mean, that's how massive the writings of the early church were. And right now, I'm even just now starting to get into the Nicene period. And I'm still learning more and more about what I'm reading, what I'm studying. Am I fully engaged with everything? Do I find it all exciting and enjoyable? Well, no. Sometimes some of the things they say can seem kind of tedious to me today. But a lot of it is extremely important for us. These are things we should know. We need to know who these people were. People like Irenaeus, Ignatius, Justin Martyr, Polycarp, Origen, Athanasius, Methodius, and so many others. These are people we should know. And then when we get into the medieval period, we come across even more people that we should know about. I know about people like Thomas Aquinas, especially. one of my favorites. And I'm making it a point to read the Summa Theologica right now. And this is all part of being informed about what you believe and why, understanding your history. And I'd even say if I have some listeners who are Catholic or Orthodox, for instance, yeah, I think my left button's a little bit jammed here. I recommend you read the Reformers. Read them for yourself. See what Martin Luther and John Calvin said and why. Because I'm not going to go on and say something like everything the Reformation did was great. Not a bit. But at the same time, I do think there was a necessity to it, and it's a tragedy that it had to happen the way it did. But I would think even a lot of Catholics could look at what was going on at the time and say, yeah, there were some things going on that needed to be better than they were. And not only will you know the names of church history, you learn the people involved. You learn who, you not just the people, but you learn the history. Why do these events matter? What happened exactly? If you're big on the Reformation, where the Reformation didn't come out of nowhere. It happened for a reason. I'm just making sure that I'm doing it. Well, I guess. Note to self, come back here with power bombs. Why did the Council of Nicaea happen? And what really happened there occurs. This is one of the most misunderstood events in church history. For instance, if you meet someone who tells you, and this is sadly extremely common, someone who tells you the canon of the New Testament was voted on at the Council of Nicaea. Well, no it wasn't. Not at all. The canon was not a topic of discussion. Technically, the Trinity wasn't even a topic of discussion. What was discussed was more of the nature of the Son. That's why we didn't have much to say about the Holy Spirit there. But you need to know what happened there and why. You need to understand the Great Schism, because before there was a break-off between Catholics and Protestants, there was one between Catholics and Orthodox. What happened? Why? What's this thing called a Philoke? Hoping I'm pronouncing that correctly. You need to learn about the Crusades and about the Inquisition. Because if you read most any atheist complaining about Christianity, they will inevitably bring up something like the Crusades and say, look and see how awful these people were. Well, why did the Crusades take place? What was really going on? Was it all something wrong, or could there have been something good as well? Why did the Inquisition take place? Who was behind it? Were 50 million people in Europe really cared. Spoiler alert, no, they weren't. You need to learn about another favorite topic that skeptics like to bring up. What about the church and science? Was the church anti-science all those years? Spoiler alert again, no. Were they avoiding scientific advancement in that time? Nope. They were doing science. Quite a lot of it, even. And what about figures like Galileo and Bruno? Well, we don't talk about Bruno, so I can't say we're sure about him. But what is going on with these people? Why didn't the church accept the idea that the earth moves around the sun? Well, there's a whole lot more going on than what you'll get in your average new atheist piece of literature. Which, anyway, one interesting figure I'd suggest you read to study these issues is a man named Tim O'Neill. He's got a website dedicated to this, and he's an atheist. But he is extremely fair with what he says, and it's called History for Atheists. He talks about science and the Middle Ages, and he also deals with crazy claims like Jesus mythicism and things like that. But I recommend you read him. Why did the Pilgrims come over here? What was going on with questions of religious liberty? These are all questions that Christians need to know about, and too many of us, frankly, don't. We are caught up in our time as if the present moment is the only moment that exists, and no other moment in time matters. I often have a saying about many kids today that I encounter that they seem to not know that anything happened before they were born. I can talk about bands and things like that, movies that were really popular. Now, see, I'm not even pressing left and it's going that way. I think my controller has a serious jam. We don't need to be like that with our history. We need to know what happened. Okay, apparently there's something over this way here. And along with those lines, that can also mean you study textual criticism. How did we get the Bible that we have today? And when you study church history, I'm not going to ask you to put on rose-colored glasses and act like everything was just peachy and wonderful and the church never made any mistakes. No. Church history can also be, in many ways, a history of failure, of studying the mistakes that we made. And importantly, learning from them. Learning from the people themselves, the people who were there, what they did, and why they did it. You know, Paul, when he wrote to the Corinthians. There have to be power bombs around here somewhere. He referred even to these Jewish people, Gentile people, he referred to the history of Israel as their history as well. And it is. Well, speaking of power bombs, there they are. I gotta wonder what happened with that alien who was carrying these. Well, that was nice. Figured there had to be something here. And now that I've found the first power bomb, it looks like there's going to be several of them here for me. Yeah, I think I need to get this controller recalibrated. So anyway, as I was saying, Paul said the history of Israel was the history of the Gentiles as well. He says our ancestors went into the sea and crossed over it, led by Moses, and he's saying this to a church that has Gentiles in it. Why is that? Because they did have a shared history at that point. What happened to the people of Israel can be seen as what happened to the Gentiles. Paul says we all have one father, Abraham. Um, looks like there's an alarm setting that goes on here. In learning the church fathers, it's learning about the history of Christology, it's learning the history of theology. Why did they think the way they thought? For instance, there's me, as a classical Thomist, I hold to divine simplicity. And there's a lot of people today who look at that and say, that idea doesn't make sense to me. Well, why not? When you study church history, you learn why the church took the position that they took. And the ideas that we can hold strongly to, they could be ones that are just entirely new and have no historical precedent whatsoever. Gonna take a wild shot if there's a boss in here. And he's probably coming. Ew, hello! Looks like Ridley's decided to go digital. I have no idea how I'm supposed to hurt this guy at all. Now I know for next time. Well, yes, we'll try again. Do everything I can to avoid getting hit. Make sure there's nothing here that I need to discover. Okay, let's go fight Mecha Ridley again. There really needs to be a better way of avoiding that claw that comes down. I think there's a round 2 coming. And I didn't really want to exit just yet. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to remember where that is, because I want to do more exploring here first. So we know where Mecha Ridley is now. So now let's explore everything else. Although I am suspecting we still have to go back to Planet Zebes, because where there were power bomb doors there, and just like God creates nothing without a purpose, game designers tend to follow the same principle. So, that's really all I think I want to say about church fathers. I just want to encourage you, go out there and read them. Get their works online. You don't have to go out and buy the massive books that would take up so much space in your library. If you have a Kindle today, there's no excuse for not reading the church fathers. So we'll just do this a little bit more until I get to the time that it's time for me to stop for the day. that's just great. It's not what I wanted to do. Yeah, I think this is when I already came this way earlier. Yeah, I've definitely got my controller stuck here a bit. And looking at this, I don't think the sound on the switch is coming through. I'm not sure why that is. I'll see if I can look that over some. Yeah. I do plan on doing another live stream tomorrow night, Lord willing. And yes, to the person who left a comment on this serve I'm responding to, I will be talking about Mormonism sometime in the future, but I already know which game I want to do it with and why. So we'll do that when we get there, but I have not forgotten your request, and I very much appreciate the request. And people, please like the video, comment, share it, become a subscriber. It means so much. And please support me on Patreon as well. The more you support, the more I can keep doing things like this for you. And Jimmy, you're just helping me out with anything else I have going on in my life, because, hey, seminary can be expensive. Although I have also recently taken up a second tutoring job here, so that's going to help me with a little bit of extra income. Also, I want to encourage you all to look up TC Cannon, Teasi Cannon, just like a cannon you'd fire as a weapon. I was interviewed on her show last month sometime, and it just recently released. So I encourage you all to listen to that and leave some feedback on what you think about that. We're going to be here for just a few minutes more, and like I've told you all this stuff here, it's new to me also. So I'm enjoying uncovering this world, and I hope you're enjoying watching me uncover it as well. Let's see what's going on with that long downward shaft there, and then we'll see about a save point. It doesn't look like there's anything I can do with that. So, guys, we're just going to call it a night just a little bit early, but thanks for watching. I hope my allergies haven't been too much of a trouble here. I affirm the virgin birth, and I will see you